Hi there, my name is Jay with CompuMatter. If you're a server administrator and you've just installed ZFS in a root mirror environment, one of the major purposes of that is to know that when your boot drive fails, the other mirror drive is going to pick up and everything's going to behave according to plan. The problem is you don't know that that's going to happen until you've actually tested it. It's all theory. So in this video, both for our own purposes so we can review this and for the purposes of other people in the world that want to see how best to do this, or at least one way of doing this, we're going to show you the BIOS settings that we're setting. We're going to show you the FSTAB settings in Linux, and we're going to show you how to positively identify which drive of the two is in fact the drive that you're booting from. And then we're going to physically remove that boot disk from our server and restart it so you can see if ZFS does what it's supposed to do, and if so, how. The reason we've even created a video like this is because we need to know that it does what it's supposed to do. We've used other forms of RAID in the past, other forms of trickery in order to get a fail-safe boot environment, and ZFS really does the job. Take a look. Okay, we're going to look at the super micro boot environment so that you know how to set it up as we move along to our other motherboards. Now, this is the boot screen. We've got to start by going to the very bottom. We want to make sure that everything is going to be UEFI. So to start with, we're going to click on hard disk drive priorities. We're going to make sure all of those are disabled. After that, we're going to go to UEF hard disk drive priorities, and we're going to make sure boot number 1 and boot number 2 are in order of whichever is the first and second. And the only difference between these two NVMe drives is one says 3 right here and the other one says 4 right there, which we have to assume is the individual port numbers or the PCI slots themselves. So that's the order which we're going to put them. Boot number 1, 3, boot number 2, 4. Now we can go up to our actual boot options. Boot option number 1, we are going to simply set as UEF hard drive, and you see it says Ubuntu. Even though neither one of these drives are Ubuntu drives, ZFS, once it was installed, it's an array. The operating system is clearly picking them up as a single option because it is a mirrored option. There isn't two potential boot situations there, and it correctly identifies that. The second item will be the UEFI USB that we've got stuck in there, just in case we needed to reinstall. We'll eventually, or down the road, we might need it anyway. And that same thing applies to the UEFI USB. We need to make sure that we have that selected there. There is only one, so that's the only one we need to worry about. And USB key drive, that should be disabled. Okay. Save and exit. And you'll notice boot override, it does show us both physical disks, where in the other area it only shows us the one. So that's how that needs to look. We'll go ahead and save, changes, reset, and that'll get us into the boot environment. Okay. And that appropriately boots to the expected 22.04. All right, so we have booted up. Let's go ahead now and take a look at what Ubuntu says it's supposed to do. We can take a look at the etc. FSTAB, and we see that according to these instructions, it should be looking at boot EFI first and boot partition EFI 2 second. Now, how do we know which one those are? Let's take a look by typing this command. ls block -f. Now, focusing on the NVMe section, you notice over here boot EFI 2 and boot EFI. So that tells us, we already know fstab said we're going to boot to EFI first. That is NVMe 0N. So let's go further with this, because knowing it's 0N is going to be helpful when we run this command. All right, and that clearly shows us the serial number of the drive associated with NVMe 0 and 1. So now all we've got to do is look at the board and see which drive has serial number ending in 428. So we've taken a picture of the board, the motherboard in this area. These are the two drives on the board, and we can clearly see this one ends in 428. We've highlighted that. So if we pull this drive, we're going to be able to see if our mirror has actually worked. But that's how you put all the pieces together in taking it from BIOS straight through to the physical drive, so you know which is which. You should label them and then test them by removing the primary disk and seeing if it falls over to the second drive. All right, so here is where the rubber meets the road. I'm going to shut down the server, pull the primary drive, and reboot and see what happens. All right, we're on the motherboard. There is our top one, which is close to those SATA ports. Yank that. So in a client situation, this drive just failed, which would normally put them out of business. Let's fire it up and see what happens. Fire in the hole. And here it comes. And I am very happy to say we've got Ubuntu 22.04 booting. That's the server operating system, of course. Now you see dependency failed, boot EFI. That's missing, but it's still booting. Now that dependency is, of course, for the ZFI mirror. The ZFS mirror. You can't have a mirror if you don't have two drives. So that goes into a degraded state, and that's normal, that's expected. Okay, the boot's completed, and everything looks good, so that is a success. Disaster recovery, complete drive removal, machine boots fine. Now I'm just going to view the condition of our mirror by typing in zpool status-x. That'll give us a look at the pool, and we can see that we're notified right here, degraded, one or more devices could not be used because the label is missing or invalid. However, sufficient replicas exist for the pool to continue functioning in a degraded state. So that's our indicator of where things stand. And if I want to go a step further and show which drive actually is booting, we can see that it is EFI 2. And if I wanted to see which NVMe is actually in the system, which serial number, because remember, I'll see 2 in the system. Typically, I won't know which one is bad at a glance. We'll just type in NVMe, and only one NVMe shows up. We can see the serial number right here, so we know which drive is the good one and which drive has failed. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and shut this down and put that drive back in. All right, booting back up. Yes, we'll go ahead and Okay, so right here was where the system previously let us know it was in a degraded state. But you'll notice over here it now says mounted boot EFI, mounted boot EFI 2, a clear indicator that everything's working and it did not go into a degraded state. All right, a completely normal boot to a command line. We can look at the drives, and we see EFI and EF2 are back in place. So, success. Drive removed, drive reinserted, absolutely no difference in the way the server performs. Well, thanks very much for taking the time to watch this video. I suspect you were equally impressed as I was. Thanks very much for watching. Bye-bye.